About Gemara. Today we sort of conclude the details of what happened at the Churban, jumping back and forth between Bayis Rishon and Bayis Sheni. Okay, we are up to the Gemara here. The two dots, about 10 lines from the top of the page. Nun Ches Amud Aleph. So the pasuk says, "Bnei Tzion," the children of Tzim Hayakodim that are more precious. Hamusaloyim, the puz. Puz is a precious stone, and musaloyim. What is musaloyim? My musaloyim. What do you mean musaloyim the puz? Elam have a mechafer the pizza. They cover themselves with this precious stone. This precious stone in total, two measures of Easter, which is very small amounts, came down to this world. One came to Rome. The rest of the world shared. So when they cover themselves with puz, it's impossible. The Jewish young boys and girls were so handsome and so pretty that they put to shame this puz, this precious stone. And the Gemara gives an example. The eminent people of Rome having a kitted gushbanka. They should take an image of the figure that they had on their coins, the stamp on their coin, the signet ring, and they would have in intimate relations and look at that image and projecting that image to the child that they would bear. They bring Jewish young children and tie them to the post of the bed. They put out the beds, and they would say make tashmish, so that they would somehow or another project that image to their children. In fact, we find this concept. Rabbi Yechanan would sit behind Mar Bracha, would sit outside the mikveh. So when the women went out of the mikveh, the first person that they saw was Rabbi Yechanan. So they should think about him and tashmish, so they should have children like Rabbi Yechanan. One Jewish kid said to another, "Where in the world does the Torah forecast such a terrible, humiliating punishment? Be tied to a bedpost doing such a terrible act." Even those matters are not recorded in the Torah will also happen. This is what it is, because this is so lewd and so disgusting that it's not even mentioned in the Torah. And how far is it from where I'm up to in the Chumash? So Amalek, this is all the way down the Dvarim. Amalei inagid pustapalga. You're about a page and a half behind. Amalei ima toilet gabe leisuch not your Talmud Chacham. You just got ahead of me. I'm not sure the point of that particular line have to do. Yeah, I'm not sure. Only in Mishmul from Shimon Gamliel. Man, it's in the posse. Aini in my eyes. Oil nafshi. So they're paying from all the daughters of my city. What do you mean? Abba made what you can say is Beta. There were 400 shuls in Beta. Abba made that for the teachers. That 400 students, even though the Morava we had Shimon Gamliel, that Shimon Gamliel Rava put into place, they should only have 25 students per class. So maybe means that that there's like a base of medrash, with you have one mashgiach or one manahil and everybody living on their own. An enemy came in. They all had the sticks ready to poke it at this enemy. But when the Romans came in and they were overwhelmed, them they tied them up, they wrapped them up in the sefarim, the Hitzisim base, and lit a fire. We learn there's a story of there was a story that Bishua ben Chananya Shaholach lekrach Godel Sheberoimi. He went to a large city, Rome. Omer Loya told him, Tinik Echad Yesh Beis Vasudim. There's a child incarcerated. Yefei Naim. He has good eyes. The Toivrei, he looks handsome. The Kavtsaisov Sedur looks at Talim. His hair is set straight. No, he takes care of himself. And he's tied up in jail. We're still continuing the story of Chod Beis Hamikdash, the last middle line. Halach, he went, but Omar la Pesach Beis Hasurim. So Shimon went and stood there by the jail. Omar, and he said the following pasuk. He said the first half of pasuk. Minasal l'meshitza Yaakov. We made it that Eden should be like plundered. Yisrael l'bayzim, and they should all be taken advantage of and humiliated. The child then continued the pasuk. Well, Omar, he said, Haloi Hashem. It's us. Hashem did it, but we did it. It's our fault because we sinned to him. Didn't want to go in his ways. So we went. We didn't listen to his Torah. Omar, he said, He could have had so many complaints. Instead, he's taking responsibility. That's an amazing thing, especially for a young man. And therefore, he said, this person must grow up to be a Moider Rabbi Yisrael. I swear, I will not move away from here. No matter what the captors want for him, I will pay that ransom. He actually paid a lot of money. This flies in the face of the Gemara we learned a while ago. I'll give more than a certain amount because we don't want to encourage these captives to do it again. So the number of ransoms, either at the time of war, it doesn't matter because life is cheap anyway, or Chase there said because they realized that he was a very big Talmud Chacham, story Talmud Chacham, so it's an exception. Or the third answer is they were threatening to kill him. And when we talked before about ransoming for captives, nobody was threatened to be killed. But here, they were going to kill his child. And it wasn't a short time. Who was it? Ben Elisha. Big argument which exactly Shlomo ben Elisha is. But most say that this is Shlomo ben Elisha. The second one is who was a peer of Rabbi Akiva. Every time we have a Shlomo Rabbi Akiva, we say davening every day. But he's also a Kohen. But not the Kohen Gadol, because he's after Churban Bayis. The children of Shlomo Elisha, they were taken captive by two different masters. The Yomim, a while later, they both of these masters or captors were in the same place. Look, I have a slave that is the handsome person in the world. The most beautiful woman. They said, you know what? Why don't we get them to marry each other? And then the children will be very handsome and we'll split the kids. They both sat in the same room. This in this corner, this in this corner. And this was the same for themselves. I'm a Kohen ben Kohenim Gedolim. So in other words, Shlomo ben Elisha here must have been from the family of the original Shlomo ben Elisha. As a shivcha, I should marry a shivcha. So it's an aveda, especially if such a lofty family, illustrious family. I'm a kahenis, the daughter of Kehenim, and I say, I'll marry an Eved. They both sat there in both corners and cried all night. They recognized each other. They both cried together until they both passed away. Yimi then said about them in Eicha, I cry for these. He says possibly, but my eyes run with water, one for each child that passed away, that they died, such circumstances. Because the story of the woman surrounded by why was she called Tzapna? Everyone saw how beautiful she was. Bas Peniel, the daughter of Peniel, who was the daughter of Kohen Gadol, she was the daughter of a Kohen Gadol, who served in the base of Mikdash itself. So Peniel, Panukel, into the base of Mikdash, only Avishes. She's Alba, Shavai Kolayla. So one of the captors maltreated her, abused her whole night. The following day, he put her on 7 layers of garments. So he took her out to the street to sell. But the person came to him, extremely ugly. You want me to buy her? Show me how beautiful she is. You push the kelim. If you want to take it, Jane, you give her nobody's pretty as her. Became even so, I can't trust you. You sheet the shisha chalukim b'shviyah, and the 7th layer, karasa she herself tore it open with his palshabave, and she rolled in sand or ashes. Okay, you don't care about our covet. But what if your own covet? Because every Jew is a tzalom alakim. This is what Yirmiyah said. That Bas Ami Chagli Sak, the daughters of my nation, they wrapped themselves up in sack. They rolled around in Ephah. Abel Yachid Asilach, that the mourning after one person you made, and Mishpat Tamrudim, and the bitter hesped, Kipisam Yovi Ashadid Aleinu. And then suddenly these oppressors came on, and these robbers came on us. Not on me, on us. We're both harmed. Abisha also gets harmed every time a Yid suffers. But if see with the pasuk, that they oppressed a person based in his family, a person in his inheritance. What's that story all about? A very sad story. A person should not name the rabbi. His master. He was what was it called? And he was taken under the wing of his master to be trained in a certain profession, apprentice. That's the Shulya de Nagri have it, and he was an apprentice to the carpenter. Pamachas once Hutzrich Rabbi Lulois. His master needed to borrow money. He turned to his apprentice. You have any money I can borrow? Send me your wife. Well, then I'll lend her the money. She Gedish, as they sent his wife to him. She spent 3 days with him. An argument in the first whether they actually had an intimacy or not. Kodem, and she was a married woman. Kodem was the husband 3 days later came along to him. Where's my wife? And he put that deal out, and I sent her away. I heard that the young people there they abused her. So what should I do? If young people, she could have walked away from it. Obviously, she was consensual. Listen to advice. Divorce her. The problem is I owe a lot of money. I'll lend you the money. Big machlek is possible in halacha. Can the husband say, "Look, I'm going to divorce you. I have the money. I'll turn it into a debt," or you cannot divorce unless you pay out the ksuba at the same time. If the 10 looks to give the ksuba. From this money here, they want to make a proof that you cannot turn it into a loan because he had to borrow the money straight away to pay it. He divorced his wife, and now the apprentice went ahead and married her. The master had to, collect the money to pay. I'm like, Bob, I'll say come and I'll do with you, and you couldn't pay. You know what? You work for me and pay off your debt. Well, let's say so his former wife and this apprentice was sitting there and eating and drinking merry. And he was standing there and being their butler. The tears were flowing down with saying, fell into the cups. That's when the Abisha decided once and for all to seal the faith of the Yidden. This is the same kind of a story as Kamsa by Kamsa in the sense that everyone was aware of it and no one said anything about it. Rabbi Yaakov Emden writes, he says a fascinating thing. He says that why is this worse? Because there are certain things which are not averis, but they're despicable, and that people allow. What are they? Especially if she was not an Ish, the 3 days, if they didn't have an intimacy, what aveda did he do here? Nothing. But it's so, it's so disgusting as a human being, not being a mensch, and that in a way says Yaakov Emden is worse than doing for strict aveda. The Abish didn't say I'm going to seal the faith of the Churban Beis Hamikdash, but for this kind of behavior. And nobody said a word. Nobody protested. Hey, this is not right. And that's the worst possible thing. Very interesting what he writes there. Okay. The others say the woman is chatting then because it's worse here. I'll stay with 2 weeks and 1 candle over the 3 days she actually did live with him together. So she was a married woman with one candle with 2 weeks. 2 men were having a sharing a woman. But if you learn the Amri then why put this aveda more than this Chatem Gzadin? Anyway, back to Gemara. Back to our Mishnah. So in our Mishnah we said there's a thing called the Siklik. There's a time when during the wars people's lives were cheap. Then when you said to this guy, take my field and let's spare my life, then you did it with your whole heart. You had no choice. But Gomer Makina, you want to save your life. Your life is more important to you than your field. So then the din is that it belonged to the guy, and if the guy sells it, the guy sold it because it actually belonged to the guy. Gomer Makina, you gave it to the guy. After that period, people were still a bit scared, but there's no longer any more that you're actually saving your life. So that period they did it different. There we say that if somebody goes ahead and buys it from the Sikrikan, we say that the Mekach is bottled. The Sikrik never owned it. When I gave it to the guy, my life wasn't in danger. So why did I give it? I just didn't want to bother him much me. I thought later on I'll go to court and try to get it back. So there, if you bought a Sikrikan, Mekach bottle, you didn't buy anything. The sale fell apart. But then what happened was, people said, so why should I go to a Sikrikan and buy it if I'm going to lose the field anyway? So what happened was this guy confiscated fields in Etzisrael, and Etzisrael suddenly became inhabited, populated by this guy. So in order to encourage people to, buy the land back from these Sikrikans, they said, you know what, if you buy the land, you can keep it, but you have to compensate to some extent the original guy. And this is how it works. The first 12 months, we say that the original owner has the right to force you to sell back. You got the money together, put it back. After 12 months, he can no longer force you to get back there. But either way, you need to give 25% to him because we believe the Sikrikan devalued the land because for him, it's no investment in it. He just got it for free. So he wanted a fire sale. And a fire sale roughly is 25% discount. So you need to compensate the owner 25%. And the only difference is the first 12 months, he can come and take it back, and he has to pay you out whatever you paid to the Sikrikin, and after 12 months, said he loses it. And we made that special takana so to get the land back in Israel. So look, and we're thinking, when do we now? Then we also in the Mishnah, if you went to the Sikrik and then you went to the Eid and saying, I'm buying it, and the Eid said yes, no, then the Eid doesn't matter, he can still buy back for you the first 12 months. But if what do you call it? If you went to the Eid first, I'm going to buy the land here, and the Eid said, go ahead. And then you went to the guy, then it's a sale, the Eid cannot buy it back. And what's the difference? Because if you went to the guy first, the Eid might have been scared. Or the other reason is, alternative others trying to say the reason is because maybe the Eid said, I'd much rather deal with a Yid in the Bezdin than go with a guy in court because it's stacked against the Yidden, let's say. So, look, I'm going to say, Rav said, if he said to him, if he just said, go make a kinyan and take the land, then of course he didn't really mean it. But if he actually wrote a shtar himself, the Yid wrote a shtar. So the Yid himself, the original owner of the field, wrote a shtar and said, okay, it's yours. Then you can't say, oh, I didn't really mean I did out of fear. Well, who asked you to write a shtar? And the Shul said, Shul said, even a shtar, you're not going unless you write clearly, I will guarantee you the field, then for sure. The chilik is just one of the Shainim brings that the difference is Machlekes Rav Shmuel, Fachrayis Toyes Sefer Gamer. No, the Rab holds that even if you don't incorporate in the shtar achrayis, when you write a shtar, you're automatically responsible for whatever happens. So it makes no difference. When you're a shtar, obviously he's happy with the sale. But according to Shmuel, even if you write a shtar, it doesn't mean automatically as a guarantee unless he incorporates that in the shtar. So then, according to Shmuel, if you wrote a shtar, doesn't mean anything. Only if you gave a chal. As the Gemara Tanya goes more, the Brayso like Shmuel, Shmuel says, Lokach Manisha, if he bought it from the wife. And then the Mishnah compares the case of a husband and wife. If the wife sold it to the person, then the husband, then it's a good sale. But if the husband sold it, then he went to the wife, you consent, because really the field belongs to her. He just has a dividend. And she says, yeah, it means nothing, because she could say, I did it out of a fear. I feed my husband. He has a temper or whatever. We'll live together. Here, the other reason I gave you is hard to understand, which is that I'd rather have a dispute with the second person than the first person. There's no dispute, so it doesn't really fit into a husband. Look at Manisha. He bought from the wife for Chazal Mechakai. First he purchased from the husband, then the Chazal Manisha makes a bottle. Unless she clearly says here that if the wife wrote the contract and gave a guarantee, then that's it. Then she can't say later, I did it to please my husband, who I should write a guarantee. So this is the word, achrayis, exactly like Shmuel. That you have to incorporate achrayis. Name it to Rav Kasha Rav. I'm looking Rav. My achrayis not mishtar. Achrayis means shtar. Every shtar, according to Rav, automatically includes achrayis. So Rabbi learned. Lokach min hasikrikim. You bought it from the sikrikim. You bought it from sikrikim and you ate it 3 years. The husband, the owner knew about it, didn't say a word. And then you turn around. So there's the first purchase of a and then there's a second purchase. So the first person bought it from the Sikrikin, and then the second person bought it from the first person. The bailim cannot go to the second buyer at all with any tinus whatsoever. The first 12 months, whatever, that's gone. And now, I don't understand the difference. You're making a distinction between the first buyer and the second buyer. So I want to know why the first buyer see that the owner could always come back and reclaim it, and the second buyer you can't. What's going on here? Either could turn if he tiny he said if he said, look, the first buyer bought it from you, he gave you the 25% like the Takana, the Mishnah. Then I feel Nami. The first guy himself says, I gave you 25%. I've been here 3 years, and if it wasn't true, you would have protested by now, and you didn't. Like we learned Chaskar about in 3 years, people don't care, maintain their contract or the deed, and that's it. That's the number. Why you make a distinction as first and second? He'd like a toyin, but if he doesn't say, look, I don't know if the guy gave you 25% or not, well, maybe not as often, and I feel the nami, that even the second person cannot retain the property because the owner says, I never got my compensation. But I've changed like a toyin. Nope. Second guy doesn't say anything. So what's going on here? In this case, toyanin liyidish with toyin lekech. So the second guy, we say second purchaser, he doesn't know what the first purchase arrangement was with the guy. And since the whole thing was upfront anyway by 25%, we are going to advocate on behalf of the second purchaser. But the first person who knows whether he gave the 25% or not, eat toyin in, and he like toyin, if he himself argues on his own behalf, fine. If he doesn't, he doesn't. So what have I learned? Haba machmas chayiv umachmas amparis. The guy came over and seized the land from a year, but because of an outstanding debt, nobody's threatening to do anything else, an outstanding debt, or he just stole it. And he has no right to kill him. He's living in a normal society. He can't just kill, but he stole the property. He became a squatter. He moved in. He's taking over the property. He's ain't boy Mishum Sekrikan. There's no law of Sekrikan. And when you know Sekrikan, we don't say, oh, if you bought it after, if you bought it, you can keep the after 12 months from now, you can keep the property and pay 25% of the owner. No, there's no sale. You bought it from a Ganef. The Ganef had no rights in this property, so you bought nothing. The Mexican is buckle. We're good. What is this? Then it says, ain't bunch of Zekrikan. But then it says, Ganef. Ganef. That's it. Standing Ganef. Rashi is a Gazan. What do you call it? Kama. Then the Bryce says, the Anparas Atzma, but the Goy stole it, you have to leave it there for 12 months in the hand of the Goy, and otherwise the owner originally can take it back and just has to compensate the person. You just contradict yourself. But I mean, you said, you said there's no laws of Sekrikin, which means that the guy pushed for Ganev and the original owner can take it back the entire field, lock, stock, and barrel. And then you tell me that there is a laws of Sekrikin come in that the buyer is a valid purchase, he just has to give 25% to the owner, and after 12 months, the owner forfeits his rights. That's how you read the Brisa. Sekrikin has to wait 12 months before we say to the original owner, you no longer have the right to take your field back and take your field back. You no longer do that. Yeah. Taking one further. The rule is ain't amparas but bubble. There's no concept of amparas but bubble. What do you mean? There's no ganov in bubble. That's what I thought right now. What do you mean? There's plenty of ganov in bubble. Ain't din amparas but bubble. There's no din of amparas in bubble. And why is that? If a Yid comes along and says, oh, that guy stole my field, therefore whatever you bought from that guy is a mekach buckle, I'm taking it back. No, not in bubble. And why not? Even the Ikabe Davar, because our courthouses everywhere. Kabul, you didn't go to a court. You have every right to go to a court, to Goyish court in this case, and to the Goy stole from you and take your field back. And it seems that in bubble they had a normal society, they ran their affairs like a normal, society, and therefore you could have gone to court. If you didn't aim you were it. So there's no din of Amparas outside Israel because our courts there. You should have gone there. When they're under the Roman dominion, where would they go? As we look at the three stages there, if you remember, right after the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, Gidul bar Eloi, this person called Eloi, Kabel Ada Betaskim Nebaga. It seems that the system they had there was the king would put a levy on an area and say, this community here has to raise $100,000, let's say, taxes. And then the people, the heads of the community, was divided according to how much land. It was like a land tax. And they divided. You have this size property, you pay, commensurate to your size, and everything was proportional. And that's how they are. They pooled the money together. And they gave it to the king. So what happened was that one of the landowners was going away an overseas trip, and they weren't going to make any produce or anything else, and they wouldn't have to pay the taxes on that land. So what's going to happen? Everybody else has to pay higher taxes. So they went and they said to somebody, you take over the land, you keep the produce, but you have to pay the taxes on that person's behalf. But what this person did was, he thought it'd be a chacham. He prepaid 3 years worth of taxes. But what happened was after 1 year, the original owners came back. The original owners gained nothing from what this guy did this second and third year because the king every year pays a tax. Prepaying doesn't help anything. Next year you have to pay the same tax. He puts a levy on the whole community. Well, the problem was that this person who prepaid, nobody asked him for what he did, is now going to incur a loss because he took produce. It wasn't 3 years worth of produce, of the taxes. So they said that the original owner said to this person, the first year you're entitled to eat the fruit. We're going to pay. We're going to give. They gave him a puppet. He thought that they should protect this guy. Why should he suffer a loss? He came in and he actually helped him out. And therefore, whether Rashi says only this particular person should pay for the whole thing or the entire community should shoulder the amount and recompensate and pay him out. I'd have nothing from it because everyone, there's no real owner here when it comes to taxes because everyone pulls together. The government just put a levy on the entire community, so everyone has to shoulder the blame equally. That's what Rashi learns. This is Mami's occasion Sikrikin where we did something to protect the original owner. Over there, we had a good reason to protect the original owner's land. It was confiscated here. Why in the world should we protect this particular person? Nobody asked him to prepay the taxes. Nobody benefits from his prepaying the taxes. So what's the point? He's like a gambler. He places money on the horn of a deer that ran away and can't catch up to him. Says the Gemara, that you lose the property. But the Bezach said, but if somebody buys the don't say the mekach is bottled, but actually the mekach is kayim. But you have to pay 25% because definitely you pay 25% underpaid the value of the land. That 25% give to the original owner. Let me get some compensation. But why we did that is because otherwise nobody was buying land from Sikrikans, and then you had all these goyim who live in Israel. And this was Pasha. The Rabban says by Rashtam, you have to about that. From here you learn out that the mitzvah is to chase out the goyim and to Yishuv Yisrael. Remember Rashi that Tesla Bay said what the mitzvah, big mitzvah Yishuv Yisrael, to buy land from the goyim. That's part and parcel of the mitzvah. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav, when we say quarter of what? Rav says, Revia Bekarka, either quarter of the property or Revia B'mais, or quarter of the money. Meaning, for example, if it's $100, according to Rav, really it's worth more than $100. He discounted by a quarter. So what's a quarter of $100? 25, and you add that to the $100, which makes it 125. The value of the property is 125. So we say quarter, we mean a fifth. A quarter of the land that you bought is what he devalued. So then you add that to the top, it becomes 125, which means you have to give a fifth of the money if you're doing the value of the land. Either give a quarter of the land itself, in size, or a fifth of the money. Shmuel says. He says no. It's $100 means that, and that is 2/3 of the real value, which means it's the value is 3/3. He dropped it by a quarter. It's not a quarter of the land he added on top. This is 3/4 of the value, which means that the value is really 133 and a third, 133 and a third, and therefore you have to, if you're giving value, you have to give him a third. Which is a 33 and a third. That's how much the land is valued by. The quarter was a fifth. No, was he added on? Makes lots of questions. They said later, somebody buys a sikrik and nice in the bailim, but via give to the owners a quarter. The bailim al it's up to the owner whether he gets cash or he gets money. So we see clearly from here it's a quarter. Like Rav Amos he has no money to buy the first 12 months. Remember, we said the original owner could buy it back. So he's talking about a case where the original owner can't afford to buy his land back. So we say you bought it from Sikrik and you can keep the land after 12 months, but you pay. They come first. They decided if they allowed it, left it before Sikrik in 12 months, anybody who comes first can buy it. Give him a quarter of the karka, quarter of ice. So we see clearly from here, it's a quarter. They like Rav. Oh, not like Shmuel. What is the amount? It's like Shmuel, but after you pay the guy the 33 and a quarter, then you add it to the $100. Turns out to be it's a quarter taka. Depends if it's mugav or mabar, the way always the Gemara computes. Omar Rav says, and this is a Gemara you should remember because it flies in the face of everything we learned till now. If you remember, we learned about Rav, that Rav was the one who brought Torah to bubble. We learned that Rabbi Yechon and Ish Lakish had a discussion. Who was this Rav? And Rabbi Yechon said, you know what Rav is? He was the one who sat by Rebbe, had a fire around him. Look what the Gemara says here. Rav says, Omar Rav, I'm not having been minyan the Rebbe. I was actually there when Rebbe said we sat down there and we nominated that this is made these laws of Sikrikin. I was there. They counted me first. Why they counted me first? I told you about Chayyim and Avkulis. Why the Gemara says is Anibis is because he was the head of the Sanhedrin, and the head of Sanhedrin should be last to give an opinion, and he always gave his opinion first. Now, normal pshat in Gemara is this is how Rashi says. Leisana al Rab is when it comes to Dinyan Nefashis. When it comes to Dinyan Mamanis, ordinary Inyanim, you start from the top, you work your way down. When it comes to Dinyan Nefashis, you work your way bottom, you work your way to the top. Otherwise, the rabbi, the head, will give an opinion, and nobody will have the courage to dispute that. But the Rebbe held that in all cases, the Rav should be the head should be the last, and you start from the smallest and work your way up. Says the Rav. I was always the first one. But we learned the Mishnah clearly says that only by din nefashos we start from the bottom, but din the we start from the top. Rebbe always started. Rebbe did never want to be the first one. He was humble, didn't want to be the first one. His humility was played out, but he didn't want to be the first one to give an opinion. In all cases, he was the last. So therefore, you started min tzad, and that's probably what Chaim of Kula did. He believed, he was so humble that he didn't believe that he was the head, and he felt that in all matters, like the Balmum to go on the mizbeach, nothing to do with Din Nefashos at that stage, and even though it turned to Din Nefashos afterwards when he wanted to kill him, but he said you always going to start from the bottom. Now, why do you start from Rav? There's two ways of learning. You start from the lowest, you work right to the highest, or you start from any of the Talmidim, but the Rav, the head business should be the top. Look at Rashi here. Remember this Rashi in Tesam and Aleph. The two lines at the top of the page. Money bereisha. They always started from me. I was first. Mimeni shalut chila. They asked me first b'shuda. Kishayinu yaisha we sat. Ma dati noite. Which way am I inclined? But Rav was considered an average student. In other words, according to this opinion, when we say maschil min atzad, doesn't mean dafke from the lowest. It means not from the av bezin. You start from the rows, you work your way through. Even though we learned in Sanhedrin that the rows, you started each row, and you start from the bottom and worked your way up, and you kept on pushing up as people became Sanhedrin. So look at the next one, Rashi. Rav was the lowest Talmud of Rebbe. Unbelievable. This life of everything we learned throughout Shas about Rav. Remember this Rashi here.
In the early days.
It doesn't say early days, not early days, no. He says, no, but this Rashi holds, I mean, Atzad means starting from the lowest, you work your way up. So Rav was the lowest.
It's interesting because in the process, you always start from the lowest because they say that the new or the young Dayan will be afraid to give his opinion once he's heard the senior Dayan.
You're not allowed to, Lisana al Rav, Lisana al Riv, we daich Lisana al Rav. You're not allowed to argue with your Rav, with the head. It's not a question of young, you're not allowed to. So because you're not allowed to.
The Rambam there brings that they'll be intimidated because this Moshe person gave his opinion. Oh, I'm going to say different than him. So to give them Dayanim a chance to say what they think, they can start with them.
Anyway, looking at the Foshim, I couldn't find any comments on this Rashi about Rav being the lowest of all Talmidim.